Welcome back to Midlife Revamped. Today, I'd like to talk about technology, intentional connection, and what you'll see in the video is me making banana sourdough waffles. So, when my kids were younger, I realized that most of our real conversations didn't necessarily happen at the dinner table. They happened whenever we could carve out some time together. My husband and I didn't work traditional 9 to 5 hours, so there would typically only be one parent home. Sure, we would have conversations, but the early years were also consumed by extended school hours, specifically after school care. Some evenings we had baseball or whatever sport was happening, dinner, bath, and homework, and then it was bedtime, and then we did that all over again the following day. With our kids, we held off on cell phones for as long as possible. And even after they received their first cell phone, they weren't immediately using social media and they weren't using it for any sort of streaming services or definitely no social media. At the time when they received their first cell phone, they were playing video games, so cell phones weren't really a big problem. Enter social media. We held off until they were in high school. And like most things with my kids, they really had to present a good argument, think presentation, bullet points, etc., to convince me to allow them to do something I wasn't entirely convinced of. In this case, adding social media, adding the social media apps to their phones. After some time, I gave in and allowed them to download social media. Of course, there were rules, and of course, the rules relaxed over time. And with this new shiny social media toy, the more time they spent on social media meant the less time they were interacting with their family. So I made a rule: no phones at the dinner table, of course, but no phones also in the car while we were driving. At first, there were some groans, and maybe they even peeked at their phones because I was driving. I couldn't possibly have seen the occasional glance at the screen, right? This was during the time that I had stopped working full time. So I became the primary parent to manage all of the driving, and each drive would last an average of 30 minutes. It took some time, but eventually they got used to the new rule. They could either take a nap, silently look out the window, or they could talk. Sometimes they didn't have much to say, and other times it would be them talking nonstop. Our time together evolved into conversations about our next vacation, friend drama, school assignments, which classes they enjoyed, which classes they didn't enjoy, college and future plans. I also didn't shy away from the more awkward subjects. Some of our best talks have happened on those car rides. With the world rushing by outside and no pressure to make eye contact, it's where I learned what they were thinking about, who they were becoming, and how they see the world. It's also where I presented different scenarios and different situations and had them kind of figure out what they would do in these make believe situations. And if you know me, I don't particularly like driving. I would happily take the bus or train if we had such a system here. However, I've come to treasure the moments where I get to drive my kids around. That time between point A and point B where I know we could potentially have some sort of connection. Because I know those rides won't last forever. Eventually, they'll grow up, learn how to drive, and take themselves places, live their own lives. But I hope when they think back, they remember our car rides, the laughter, the random talks, the feeling of being heard. So if you're still in those busy years of carpool and chaos, know that things won't always be chaotic. Use that time to connect, put the phones away, ask questions, even if you get one word answers. Eventually, hopefully, it will evolve into something more. You never know what kind of conversation might unfold. Because sometimes the most ordinary moments, like a car ride, become the ones that matter the most. Now, I'm not saying we don't have an issue with too much screen time in my family. I'm sure every family struggles with this challenge, especially in this day and age. At one point in my career, I walked around with two cell phones all the time. Yep, one for work and one for myself. Not only did I walk around with two phones, I also carried the guilt of what those screens represented. And that was my attention. That's what those screens were. And when your kids are little, they see where you put your attention. If they are talking to you and you're not making eye contact with them and not giving them your undivided attention, they'll notice. And when they become teenagers, guess what? They'll be doing the same. Kids see, hear, and watch your every move. So create a little space for some conversation.